There's only a couple episodes left of The Connors after this one, and they're trying to cram a lot in. In fact, the title has 4 plot lines involved. So let's talk about Danny Boy, The Interview, The New Hire, and The Hanging Chad. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my Connors review for the final season, episode 4. There's just 2 more to go after this one. And so the writers trying to cram a lot into one episode. In fact, there's even a new plot line that sort of comes and goes with this episode. But I can't remember when we've had 4 topics in the title. Usually it's, bop, bop, and that. And this one, sometimes there's, some extra plots going on in the episode, but whatever, they wanted to cram all of it into the title. And so each plot line really only gets, a handful of minutes. This is, a 21, 22-minute show. So we will talk about all this here momentarily. First, though, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are a subscriber for Dan Reviews It already, well, thank you so much for that. I love when you guys return and check out my stuff, especially my Connors viewers. I know you guys are very fervent for years about my Connors reviews, and I can't appreciate that enough. But if you're not a subscriber, please do subscribe and click that notification bell too, because I don't just do Connors reviews, but there's a lot of movie and TV stuff on the channel here. And if you don't know, I've done all of the Connors videos, all the Connors episodes dating back to actually Roseanne season 10 with the reboot, and then I have season by season reviews of the 90s Roseanne show on the channel as well. So a lot of Connors and Roseanne content, no doubt, but there is other stuff too that I would love for you to check out. All right, so let's talk about this here. Jody Margolin Hahn, again, the director, like I mentioned before, she will be directing all of these final season episodes, which is cool. I love that, she's been part of the family since the 90s. So I love that she's, being given the green light to just direct everything here in this last season. And this was written by Molly Kiernan and Daniel Spector, who have written some other episodes, sometimes together. I don't know if always together, but they did write together the finale of last season. So, they've been in the fold for a bit there. All right, so let's talk. I guess we'll go sort of theme by theme here. So Danny Boy is the start of the title, so we will start there. Is that the main focus of the episode? I don't know if there is one. I don't even know if there's an A story. I think there's like maybe 2 B stories and 2 C stories. I'm not sure. But so Danny Boy has to do with the lawsuit. We have Jane Lynch returning as the lawyer. In the beginning of the episode, Darlene comes in and talks to Jackie on the couch and says, hey, like, where is everybody? Mark is upstairs. He's never seen in this episode, but he's upstairs hacking. And Darlene is like, okay, I want to talk to, Dan's lawyer before she talks to him about the stuff about Roseanne and the pills. I want to get some free legal advice if I can, about what to do with Mark. So enter Jane Lynch, and she talks to her, very, very transparently about, what if my mom was a teenage hacker and all of this. So Jane Lynch, instead of giving her advice, actually says, well, my advice is you should pay me if you want legal advice that has nothing to do with your mom's case. So that's really the only time we refer to Mark. And so that's not one of the plot points in the theme or in the title. But we have Dan, and his problem is he can't cry on command. He can't really be emotional on the stand, and that is a real problem apparently for the case, because a jury will react a lot more sympathetically if you can show some real anguish over what happened, some real emotion, and Dan has a problem with that. Not from a from a mental standpoint. He is a stoic dude, and so it's not like he has a moral stance against it. He just isn't prone to that. So later in the episode, we find out from Jackie that, well, I saw Dan crying one time at this thing with his friend, and he was singing Danny Boy, and he just got real emotional, welled up. And so Jane Lynch is like, well, I'm not gonna sing Danny Boy to him while he's on the stand. But then the tag scene at the end of the episode is Jane Lynch and Laurie Metcalf as Jackie singing Danny Boy to Dan at the lunchbox, and he does start tearing up and blubbering and all of that. So that's sort of the whole thing with that plot line. See how quick these plot lines are in this episode since they've crammed so many in. But all right, so that's pretty much it with that. Let's move to the interview. That's about Becky. And she is trying to get a job. She obviously is still in school. We've established that. But she has an interview with this company. And she doesn't realize at the time that it's for a management position. She's actually going to run this entire division. And I don't even remember what it was about. She's helping kids with something. I don't know. It's sort of irrelevant to the comedy of the scene, I guess. But she goes earlier in the episode to ask Darlene for advice. Hey, you're a manager. Can you give me some tips on things to do in an interview, reasons you might hire someone? Because, of course, Becky right now just works at the lunchbox, so she certainly didn't have to interview for that. So Darlene, gives her a few recommendations. Hey, just, kind of mirror the person asking the questions, the interviewer, and kind of do what they do. They sort of, if they can see themselves in you, then they can see you in the position a little bit more. And actually, that's really good advice. I didn't think of that, but that is actually pretty salient advice, I think. And then of course Darlene has to get a barb in about how it doesn't work the same on her because she's had years and years of resentment or whatever towards Becky. So, but she goes in and meets this guy, and there's two big exercise balls on the floor, and she thinks he's going to sit down on one, but instead he's just moving it so he can get to the desk. But not seeing this, she sits down on one, and he's like, well, most people sit in the chair, but do whatever makes you feel comfortable. And she's like, oh, no, we just have exercise balls at the house. But if you have chairs here, maybe I'll try that. So that was a funny moment. And it turns out, yes, that this is for a bigger position than she thought, a management position, to run an entire unit or department or whatever. And he ends up recognizing her from AA. So she goes and pours out everything. And it turns out it was when she was getting her 3-year chip. And, so she had a big share. And so she kind of goes on and on about that in the interview. And the guy goes, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm not in AA. I just was at that meeting for somebody else to get their chips. I left before you even, said your share. So I didn't know any of that. So, Becky, of course, feeling very defeated and whatever. But she ends up getting the job. That's when, she learns. Oh no, I guess she knew it was a management position before she even left the office. But later on in the episode, she shares with everybody, "Oh my gosh, I got it. What's the position? What's the position?" And of course, Jackie asks how much. That's her most important question. So that's the interview portion. All right, see, we're moving through these. The new hire, that's an easy one. So Harris. Well, Ben is actually in this episode. Starts with Ben. We see Ben actually in a few different scenes. I guess they had him for the week, so they figured, let's put him in a few scenes. Was he in? He was in one scene with Darlene. Then the other scenes, not so much. And actually, well, that has to do with Chad, so I guess we'll talk about that last. But we have Ben coming into the lunchbox with this hot young intern guy that Harris immediately is flirting with, takes a liking to. She starts, talking to him a little bit and realizes he's not getting paid for his internship at the magazine. So she offers him a job at the lunchbox. Jackie pulls her aside and is like, what are you doing? Like, you can't date your coworkers. You just hired him. You're obviously flirting with him. You got a crush on him, whatever. Yes, he's hot, but let's try and focus or whatever. So turns out he is terrible at the job, just delivering food to the wrong places and not even knowing what's going on, and saying, oh, I should probably write this stuff down. And so it's time to fire him. And Harris is like, oh, he's never going to date me if I fire him, this and that. Look, there's plenty of fish in the sea. This seems a little desperate. But whatever, I guess for the sake of the comedy, it works. But yeah, so she ends up, firing him, and that's that's that portion. All right, so now we get to I think maybe the A story, if there is one, which is the hanging Chad. So Seth Green's character Chad we met in episode 2, I believe. So he was not in the last episode, but he was in episode 2. And it turns out we learned that she's been actually going to the Lobo to meet up with him and chat every single night. Darlene has, and so she's revealing that to Becky earlier in the episode. Ben comes in to grab some food real quick, say hi to Darlene. They're talking about Chad at the time, and Darlene clams up and changes the topic. Oh, how's the magazine going? Whatever. And when Ben leaves, Becky's like, "Well, dude, if nothing's going on between you guys, why did you clam up when Ben came in?" She's like, "Oh, well, I only get to see my husband, a few minutes a week at this point. I don't want to talk about other stuff. I want to, whatever." So, sure, covering it up, but obviously there's more to it than that. So then we go to the Lobo a little bit later in the episode, and Seth Green is there as Chad with his wife, and things are not good with them. He's already kind of extolled that in the other episode. And Darlene kind of reiterated it to Becky earlier in this episode, in case somebody missed it. So Darlene is there and sees what's happening, and she's like, "Oh man, I can't let this stand." She's overhearing the wife, kind of slander him and say, "Look, who's the floozy that you're going home with all the time? You're obviously not home. You're here every night. What are you doing? Who are you with? Whatever." Basically using it as ammo for the divorce. We already know that their marriage is on the rocks, /over, /whatever. Maybe we don't know the specifics of it, but he makes it pretty clear in that conversation that, he's not trying to give her any ammo to get more things out of him in the divorce. So Darlene ends up coming over and saying, "Hey, look, I just want you to know, I'm here every night. I've never seen him pick anybody up, this and that." He calls her by her name, which I think is stupid. But, he says, "Oh, thanks, Darlene. I got this. I don't need your help," whatever. I think just calling her by her name is suspect, right? But then Darlene adds fuel to that fire and says, "Oh, no, we sit and talk every night, whatever. He's never gone home with me," or something like that. And so the wife is like, "Oh, well, great. So now you're having sort of an emotional affair with this girl, whatever." So kind of blows up his spot. Darlene apologizes. He's like, "Well, it's, whatever. Obviously our marriage is over," and this and that. Yeah, I don't know. I thought the whole thing was, why was Darlene so stupid about that? And why was Chad so stupid about it? Calling her by her name tells the wife that this person, which opened then the door for Darlene to say more. So I don't know. So that's pretty much the whole episode. That's all 4 plot lines. Again, I don't think there's like an A story here. Maybe, the Chad stuff and the stuff about the lawsuit. Maybe those are like B stories. The other 2 are C stories. I don't know. This is a mixed bag for me. All of these this season, I gave the premiere of the season a little bit of a higher grade, I think, because it was just so nice to see this family again after a year. And knowing that there's only a couple of episodes left, there hasn't been an episode to really wow me this season. They've all been okay. Haven't really gotten enough laughs from them. I would say this was probably the funniest of all of them, because I think the stuff with Becky was great, at the interview. Darlene, trying to get some info out of the Jane Lynch character, that was pretty funny. But they crammed way too much into this episode. Obviously I've been sort of saying that since the beginning of this video, but to have 4 topics that are worthy enough to even put in the title tells me that there's too much going on. I'm surprised they didn't even throw something in about, Mark's hacking, since they at least brought that up. Look, I get it. There's only 6 episodes. We got to cram. Harris hasn't really had anything to do this season. So, okay, let's give her a plot. I understand that. And I will say, it was one of the funnier elements of the show, and it was a reason for us to see Ben in a scene. So all right, that was interesting. But boy, for the most part, this was another just kind of okay episode for me. I really am hoping that the final two, specifically the finale, I hope is going to be really, worthy. Next week, I'm expecting kind of more of how it's been. Are we going to wrap up any of these issues by the end of the season? Are we going to wrap up Darlene and Ben? I hope so. Some of you in the comments have mentioned maybe they'll get divorced, maybe they'll split up. I really hope that that's not what's going on. And I mentioned that last week too. Are we going to finish the drug trial, or the trial about the drugs, with Dan, and are we going to see the Connors win in the end and get some money? I don't know. I mean, it's very, very quick if they expect us to believe that we've gone, even if they're not doing real time, so it's not 6 weeks, even if it's 6 months, I doubt that they would get a verdict and a trial that quickly with everything that has to go through that. So I don't know, but whatever. It's sitcom land. We'll give it a little bit of a pass, I guess, time wise for that. But yeah, for this episode, it was just another, kind of okay one for me. I will give the MVP to Becky because I think she had by far the funniest scene, which was the interview. So love that. And on the whole, I will give the episode. I don't know, like it's a B, it's a B minus. I do think it's funnier than last week's, so I will give it, a bit of a plus for that. But yeah, I guess overall this is still in that range. Because I got more laughs this week, I'll give it a B. But if you said B minus or even a C plus, I wouldn't fight you on it. I think that's all right. So that is this week's episode. Next week we have exercise bands, money plans, and faraway lands. Back to 3 topics that rhyme. And then finally, we will have the finale in 2 weeks. So I'll be with you. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this episode, please. Would love to hear from you guys. All right, until next time, I will see you. Bye.